if there's this thing that if you have an egg and you crack the egg to let the baby out, that baby will usually die because it's pecking out of the egg, which gives the neck muscles the strength it needs to keep lifting its head up.
You know, when you love to hear someone saying Eid Mubarak to you in West, by saying Eid Mubarak, they do not become Muslims just by saying it. They just give you a celebration of that particular day. You should also be...
it's inherently Christian. It's not a Muslim holiday, right? I mean, Muslims can celebrate it, right? But its origins are in Christianity.
Origin?
Islam will continue to be triumphant until there have been 12 Khulafa, all of them from Al-Quraysh.
The God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. Nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever.
This is my brother, my executor, and my successor among you, so listen to him and obey.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting.
Whoso obeys me obeys God. Whoever disobeys me disobeys God. Whoever disobeys my commander disobeys me.
The Lord said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession.
Two systems of government, two visions for life on earth. Whichever is true changes everything. This is Christ and Khulafa.
Welcome back to Christ and Caliphate. This is 2026, and we are going to kick off the new year talking about three things today. First, we're going to have a lighter-hearted look at the widespread Arab celebration of Christmas this year and some of the reactions to that. Then we're going to be talking about the ongoing Somali fraud investigation and how it's being enacted in Washington state now. And then we are going to be talking about the current round of protests in Iran and what that means for the country. So, guys, Christmas Mubarak.
Christmas Mubarak.
I don't know if it's just the algorithm or whether there's like a genuine social movement, but I saw so many pictures of Arabs in Muslim countries, even in Pakistan and Turkey, like putting up Christmas trees and celebrating Christmas. And there were lots of like furious reactions to that.
Yes, I saw a lot of furious reactions. I probably didn't see as many of the positive, like, oh, we're under the tree and where I saw like candy cane pajamas and stuff like that. This is you're in Turkey, you're not in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, I'll take the more optimistic and better approach because it's something unusual and something that I deep down inside wanted to see, because no matter what your religion is, when you represent your minorities, because in Muslim worlds, Christians are minorities, right? So when you celebrate minorities, that's a positive sign that you are more incorporating everybody in your the nation circle. I think the idea behind it is to promote nationalism over religion, and of course, there are always critics when you go against the norms defined. And if that's true in America, you do something that is against the norm, then people will speak against it. But personally, seeing a Christmas tree in Islamabad was a big thing for me, and I was really, really happy that there were like a very Muslim-looking guy, with a long beard and a cap on his head, with his kids taking pictures with that Christmas tree. And one more thing I would like to mention on this platform, since it's about Christmas or Christmas tree in particular, I would say this. There is a lot of misinformation in Muslim world about Merry Christmas. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mary is happy. Christ is Messiah, which Muslims also believe. Mass is gathering.
Yes, correct.
So you are just saying that Christ's gathering Mubarak.
Right.
Right? It is, if I translate it to, then it just simply becomes happy gathering of Christ's birth, which Muslims also do not deny that Christ was born, and they call him Christ. Nowhere it says that, you are celebrating the birth of God's son. right? So the notion is, of course, the Christians believe is different when it comes to Christmas. So to Muslims, I would say this, that, when you love to hear someone saying Eid Mubarak to you in West, by saying Eid Mubarak, they do not become Muslims just by saying it. They just give you a celebration of that particular day. You should also be celebrating these type of events, particularly Christmas. And there is no shirk, the word I'm using, there is no shirk in saying Merry Christmas to a Christian.
Yeah.
Well, what about like a tree or pajamas or?
No, man, that's the secondary. I'm talking about the top level.
Okay.
So in that, like, I think you can actually make a pretty reasonable case. Obviously, if somebody is kind of taking a Salafi approach, they're more than welcome to do that. And I don't begrudge anyone their convictions in not saying Merry Christmas to a Christian. But I'd also make the argument they're understanding the sort of Islamic perspective reasonably well. I would say that if a Muslim walks into a church and to observe, they're not betraying what they believe in by doing that.
Right.
If they took communion, that would be betraying what they believe.
Right.
That would be a ritual that is a denial of like what the Quran says about Jesus. Right.
Right.
It's an explicit celebration of his death.
Right.
Muslims believe Jesus was born. It's not inherently compromising for them to celebrate Jesus' birth unless you're going with the sort of like, the hardcore Salafi attitude. Islam gives us 2 holidays, Ramadan and Eid. Anything beyond that is bitter.
Yeah, and also it is from that notion, it is just that, okay, this is Christian holiday. We should not celebrate it because it's Christian holiday. Then that's the only point you can put forward. But if you say Merry Christmas, that means you accepted that God gave birth to a son. That is not true. Just the notion of this particular word does not say anywhere that you believe in the birth of the Son of God.
Right, and especially with Christmas in this day and age as well. Like, Japanese people celebrate Christmas and have like zero conception of like even the basis of it.
Yeah, even they don't believe in the birth of Jesus at first place. Muslims believe that Christ, Messiah, because the word used for Isa in Quran over the time is Messiah, Messiah, right? So even if you say the Christ was born, that's still within the bounds of Islamic belief.
Right. It's not an automatic affirmation of everything Christians believe when you say that. Okay, so my favorite post on this, the objection that gets thrown around though is, as a hadith says, whoever imitates the people is one of them.
Yeah. When you go down to hadith, sorry, I'm not giving you a chance to speak this morning. I don't know. Maybe it's a New Year thing.
I mean, I guess what I saw was a lot of the pushback by, I guess you would call them like Muslim influencers, right? Like, people, they have YouTube channels or whatever. And they were pissed, very pissed. Like, one of them did this one, he has 2 daughters, and the one daughter, I think they're twins, right? Or they're very close in age. And it's him with one daughter, and the one daughter and him are like, let's take a picture under the Christmas tree, and he's wearing like a Santa hat and a scarf, and then the other daughter's like, yay, daddy, let's do it, And then the other daughter shows up, and she's wearing like the green, like the colors of Islam, all over her. And she's like, you can't do that because, it's acknowledging that God had a son, and going through all of these like Muslim theological points about Islamic theological points about like what was being said in their observation of Christmas. So it was crazy because I saw a lot of replies to that. And some of them were like, right on, brother. And then there were a lot of people like, why do you care? Okay. And I thought that was the one I connected with the most. Like, it's a Christian holiday. It's inherently Christian. It's not a Muslim holiday, right? I mean, Muslims can celebrate it, right? But its origins are in Christianity. So
origin is still, I think, it's taken from Roman pagan holiday. And
Okay.
No, we have a video about this. We
There's-
don't have time to get into it today. It's just not true.
So I actually am going to address that very quickly.
okay.
I believe that, like, if you look at anything over time as it progresses throughout history, right, it adopts the culture of its time.
Mhm.
So 100, 200 years from now, right, they're going to be like, why were they all staring at their phones? Were they in a cult, right? Like, the context will be lost.
Mhm.
People will view the images or the traditions that like, evolve over time. Like when I tell my kids that I could not take a phone call from something that wasn't tethered to a wall and didn't have a, you know what I mean? So when I go like this, they're like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It looks stupid to them. And I think that's what happened with Christmas, what happened with other holidays, right? Like it must mean this because this was going on at the same time.
So what irritates me about this is the same people that accuse us of like syncretizing with like Germanic or Roman culture for these kind of things. Are the exact same people that accuse us of having no culture in the West.
Okay.
Which is it, right? Are we syncretizing from, are we syncretist with our old culture, or do we have no culture? And I would make the argument that Christmas was not started by any means to replace a Roman holiday. Like, it's demonstratively true that that's
But
not.
there is creep, right? Like,
Of course there is.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And that's also
Easter bunnies have nothing to do with the resurrection.
right.
But it's an existing thing that somehow gets wrapped up into this other thing, right? That what you want to do is make a zero-sum argument that this thing has to go because this other thing is a part of it. And listen, every religion has that, right?
So
Every religion has
right. So the reason we have Christmas trees covered in decorations and lights has nothing to do with Norse paganism,
Right.
and has everything to do with how Germans celebrated Christmas
Right.
in the 16 and 1700s.
Right.
The reason it got to the West is because Queen Victoria and Prince Albert put up a Christmas tree because Prince Albert was from Germany, and everybody saw it and liked it and copied it.
Yeah.
This is a tradition that takes us back to
defy you to go to Italy and find forests and forests full of pine trees.
right.
It doesn't exist, right? Like, go to Turkey. It doesn't exist. It never has existed. They're not native to the land. So getting these giant spruce trees and putting things all over them and then having, like these festivals over them, it's not a thing. It's never existed. It exists now because they've done it, right? Like they've
Yes.
gone back in retrospect and done it. But
So as a Christian, when I celebrate Christmas, I don't actually think Jesus was born on December 25th.
Right.
It's not religiously important for me to believe that. It's not even religiously important for me to celebrate Christmas. It's not mandated by the Bible. We're free to celebrate it, or free to do Hanukkah, or celebrate in whichever way we see fit. When I celebrate Christmas, I'm choosing to pick a day in which to celebrate when God entered the world, and I'm choosing to celebrate the traditions and cultures that I myself live in.
Yeah, it's
Go back.
more symbolic than exact date, right?
Right. And I'm joining in with the ways my ancestors celebrated as well, and it's fun, right?
there's also a historical figure named Saint Nicholas who did not possess magic powers, ride around in a sleigh, jump down people's chimneys, leave, like, none of those things.
Who was Turkish?
Who was Turkish? Right, he was Turkish.
Alhamdulillah.
So my favorite my favorite response. My favorite response to all
Drank tea, not hot chocolate.
my favorite response to all the sort of like Muslim backlash against Muslims posting pictures of the Christmas tree was a Muslim girl who took a selfie with her in a Christmas tree, and her caption was, "Here's a picture of me standing next to my ISIS detector."
Yeah, a lot of people come up with a lot of funny things, I like it.
And then there's the internet. The internet, it lives
Okay.
forever.
Out of this, all things, let me make a controversial comment. Okay. And it's about the prediction. I see a trend in Muslim world, or East in general, that the trend is more towards slowly growing. It's not overnight. People will say, what the crap you're talking about? I'm saying that there is a trend which will slowly grow over years. Maybe it take 50, 60, 70, or 100 years, right? To slowly have more acceptance, or Muslim world is going more towards liberalism. And West is going back to, I won't call it radicalism. I would call it more conservativeness. So there is the balance is shifting now.
Yep.
This is my prediction. In 50, 40, 50 years, things will look a lot different.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a pendulum, right? Swings one way, swings
the other
another
way.
swings
Yeah.
the other way. I mean, look at where Egypt was in the 1950s to where Egypt is now to where it was even 20 years ago.
Right.
Right. So, things evolve, and the factors that cause cultural evolution are usually things that exist outside of culture, right? Like technology, they influence culture, or the internet, right?
I'm waiting for the moment that I can have an interaction where I say Merry Christmas to somebody and they say, "Oh, I'm Muslim," and I'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Christmas Mubarak." All right, let's switch gears here. So the national level scandal of the fraud in Minnesota, which we don't want to say every single person involved was Somali, but there were a great deal of Somalis involved in this. Now there's further controversy around this because we have some YouTubers and independent journalists who've been going to these daycares and accusing them of being, fraudulent. Whether how much truth there is to that, I think some of them have already been debunked, but I'm sure more will come out over the coming days and months. Then there's been stories here in Seattle of people finding registered daycares and then going to what one article called a $500,000 home, and it's like this giant mansion, which cannot be true because I couldn't even buy my tiny house for $500,000.
Not here.
No, in this area.
Yeah.
But so have you guys seen any of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this immediate impulse to kind of go investigate all the Somalis?
I mean, okay, take a step outside of the word Somali, and if it smells like corruption and looks like corruption, or it smells like fraud, it looks like fraud, it probably is fraud. You can't go to a daycare on a Tuesday in the middle of the day and not find children. That's impossible, particularly when it says it has 100 children. All right, fine. Maybe like a YouTuber is going to go on a Sunday, right? But the YouTuber in question, I think his name was Nick Shirley, was also with a guy who had done about 2 years of work on this, trying to get it up the chain, in the government in Minnesota, right? Trying to get somebody to pay attention to what was going on. And he turned to Nick Shirley because no one was paying attention. And then it started to break, right? So then, Nick went there and did some boots on the ground stuff or whatever. I'm not saying hey, I know Nick. I don't know Nick. No, we don't know Nick. We don't have any association with anything that's going on over there. And I actually believe that that's happening probably right here in our city.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere. Right?
I mean, I think
that's why I said take a step outside of the word Somali.
Right.
Right.
And it is somehow associated with political agenda, right? The targeting of Somali community in general, right? It became a political rhetoric, and it's been used as a political rhetoric, right? I think these type of things or corruption exist everywhere. Or in terms of United States, it exists in New York, it exists in Washington, it exists in Texas, it exists everywhere. If you look with the lens of a detective agent, right? Then you will find those things everywhere. Right now, Somalis are under radar for sure, right? And when you look them with that particular lens and you go dig deep into those things, then you will find a lot of things coming out. And I think that's what is happening. But my overall take is that it's not particularly one particular group, say Somalis. You dig out, say Hispanics, say Indians, say Pakistanis, any group. If you target them as a community and go find out, you'll find a lot of people doing a lot of shady stuff. And it's not just these brown people or Asian people or black people, even Italians to say, or Germans to say, or to anybody. It's a sin nature more than just a particular race thing.
Correct. Now, I'm glad you said the word Italian, though, because this actually brings up a great example that if you look at the history of organized crime in New York, it did disproportionately belong to Italian Americans back in the day, right? There was a very specific thing within Sicilian culture.
It's Godfather 2.
Mafia.
Yeah.
Godfather 2, they had an olive oil store.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So it's not so organized crime in America was specifically influenced by a subculture in Sicily. And so now painting all Italians with that view is not somebody.
Listen, they had to deal with that.
Yeah, they got to deal with it.
They
Right?
did deal with it. I mean, it's still part of their culture. I know a ton of Italians back east. Right, I grew up around. I went to a Roman Catholic school for 5 years. Like I know a ton of Italians, and their culture has adapted to it. I knew people growing up who grew up running like little, bags of money, right, for bets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Sicilian mafia was an exceptional case, and because it involved violence and control, and there's a mafia sitting controlling. There's a table, people elected. I think comparison with Somali is apple and oranges.
No, okay. Sure, there's some differences, but here's where I would say is the common factor. You have already sort of shady elements within the society that have an advantageous situation because you have an immigrant group of outsiders, which is a sort of like close-knit community, which you can both extort protection money from, who genuinely need protection, who need something that you are providing, and that creates an opportunity for a sort of culturally specific criminal enterprise that uses the culture to spread. Now, this is the reason this is an example I really like here, because this is so far in the past. The prejudice is out of it for most Americans these days. I don't meet anybody who really hates Italians anymore.
No, I mean, we watched The Godfather.
We don't even hate.
I almost binge watched it if Stranger Things was not out, I would have been binge watched Godfather 1, 2, or 3.
No, not only do we not hate Italians, we actually don't even hate the mafia, right?
Right.
It's like the mafia story is like an important part of like the sort of American founding myth at this point.
And then listen, it's turned into other things. Like Gangs of New York is about Irish gangs, right?
Yeah.
Like they West Side Story, right? Latino versus white gang versus Latino gang, right? Like it's been a part of our the ethnic breakdown of things has been a part of the story for a long time.
So basically, what I'm arguing for is that we should learn from how we currently feel about Italians and basically project that onto the Somali community.
Okay, but this is why I think that that's not like a complete analysis. I'll tell you why. Americans generally came from Europe, right, for a long time. And then it's over the past like half century that the values of other cultures have started to be infused. And I'm part of that, right? And you're part of that, right? Like we come from different places with different values. I heard somebody say this like really great analogy that human beings are hardware, right? Like we're like phones. And you know, if you have a phone, let's just say it's jailbroken, you can upload whatever you want onto it. But culture and tribe are software, and not all software is compatible with each other. So the software of the United States, the culture of the United States is based on nation states, right? It's based on, you know, like the Magna Carta, right? Like all of the values that came out of the West in the, you know, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, and everything else like that. And that's how it exists now. So what you see, I think, happening is that people are coming from these other cultures, and their inability to integrate is because they're not focused on, like, all right, how do I sync up with the software that the United States is running? You know, it becomes more like, this is good for my tribe, this is good for my people, and it doesn't matter if it's like, you know, if you come from a culture where corruption is everywhere, right? You're going to be like, well, who cares? Because it's always like Somali culture, like politically, has always been corrupt, right? If you go all over the world, you can go to places like Nigeria and get a lot done with $1,000 in bribe money. If you get pulled over in Africa, it's accepted that you're going to give a bribe to get out of it. It's all over the world, but in the United States, right? Like in different countries, sure, people might like look for bribes or something like that, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same as these other cultures. So I know you're like sitting here wanting to like smack me down, but let me finish. Let me finish. All right.
I'm just holding my thoughts.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm just saying that it's a twofold problem. Okay, first of all, it's the problem of like the local governments, like not checking up or caving into left-wing ideology that, you know, calling out crime is racist somehow, right? Like calling out crime committed by minorities is racist somehow. And that's not a Somali thing, right? Like that happens in San Francisco. It happens in different places where you see these flash mobs breaking into stores. It happens here in Seattle, right? Like theft is at an all-time high all across the country. And it's just a different like mentality that people have from different cultures, that they can come in and just take stuff. Listen, white people are stealing stuff too, right? But it's happening all over the country, and it's infecting, like, I would say, like the software, right, of our country.
And
So, okay, what's the difference between somebody going in, like a white lady going into Neiman Marcus and shoplifting, right? Or a flash mob in downtown Seattle? Like, why they closed the Target was because people were just like breaking into the Targets and stealing stuff. They were flash mobbing it, you know, 30 people. I've been in one of those. When I was a kid, I was working at a convenience store in New Jersey, and a busload of kids came in and they flash mobbed us. There was 40 kids in the store, and they just started taking whatever they want and running around. There was nothing 3 employees could do about it, right? Until we locked the door. And we locked the door, and then all of a sudden we were like, no, 1 kid at a time, 2 kids at a time. And we had to follow them around. Otherwise, we were just going to take everything, right? So, like, my manager was Haitian. That was his idea. You know what I mean? But these kids were like American, you know, kids from like the inner city. You know, I'm not gonna say they were all black, because there were white kids, there was Hispanic kids, it was all different. I mean, I grew up in the hood. That's how it was. So what I'm saying is that what's happening is cultures, right? That are clashing, you know, and like the people that are coming here from those cultures are looking at like our culture and saying, why should I have to be a part of your culture? You know, when like it's clear I'm getting the money from the government in Minnesota, and nobody's stopping me from doing what I'm doing. So why wouldn't I go tell everybody, like, hey, this is good for my tribe, right? And again, take Somali out of the argument, right? Insert Pakistani, insert Hindu, right? Insert Turkish, insert, you know, whatever, right? English, right? Insert whatever you want. The point is that the cultures are not integrating like they used to be anymore. And I think that that's also like bad messaging from our government, right? It's also this idea that people come here from other countries, and instead of like the expectation being that you will integrate into our society, into our culture, the way it is, imperfections and all, right? Because coming here hopefully was your choice, or you came here because you had an opportunity or something like that. And now it's like, it's just become this huge, like, disorganized, like like it's not a melting pot anymore. You know what I mean? Or if it is a melting pot, it's overflowing.
And with the Italian analogy, I'm not making a direct equivalent between Somali culture and Italian culture. There are significant differences, obviously, and there are systematic problems in Somali culture. But here's what I'm saying: what I'm calling for is the amount of clarity that people have about Italians versus mafia now, and employing that kind of clarity and patience now, which means that even if, say, 90% of Somalis were in on some sort of criminal enterprise, which I don't believe, let's say it was 90%, we still shouldn't implicate that remaining 10% of people in that, but see them as individuals. So this should be investigated dispassionately and intentionally, not in political tribal fervor.
Right. And I would say this because I was holding in on, because you mentioned hardware and software, and that's where I think I have a lot of wiggle room to talk about. I think when you compare culture with the software, it's a beautiful analogy. But we have to understand that software doesn't fall from the tree. Right? It's created by humans. Similarly, cultures are created by humans. And when we have a newer version of a software, you get an update on a culture or a software, right? And that's how culture evolves over time. For example, if you look back and says in 1776, the culture of United States look a little different than what it looks right now, right? Or not a lot different, not say a little different, a lot different. So I think culture, with a lot of people integrating into it, it gets updated just like a software get updated. As long as you are not bringing a bug, the term I'll use in terms of software, if you're not bringing a bug to the software and you want to integrate and become an update for that software, I think it's a positive integration.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to say tribalism is bad, right? Like, it works in different places, I'm in, I mean, it's not a great example, but my dad was an Uzbek, right? I know Afghans, and they don't generally trust other people from different tribes. But it is the way it is there, right? Like, it's just the way it is. Like, and to try and move past that, they're going to have to choose to move past that in different ways. He's got this, like,
everything this man is saying is Uzbek propaganda.
Yeah. And cultures who do not let the updates coming in, I think they are stagnant cultures and they reflect past. Afghanistan, for example, you mentioned rightly about the tribalism. They do not let those updates of cultures merge in so that look
I know it's so crazy to have a conversation with an Afghan, right? And then on the one hand, to be like, oh, you know how Afghans are, right? But then, you mentioned the word, like, Tajik to a Pashtun or something like that.
Oh yeah.
You know how those Tajiks are, right?
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? It just is like a further, I would say, like, growing up in the West and everything. I mean, we have our own tribes, right? Like, I'm from Jersey,
Yes.
like,
deviance, human.
I'm a New Yorker,
always-
Midwestern or whatever. But I think the thing that the operating system of the United States was designed to was to say, like, hey, we have differences. You have some like the ability to express your differences. You can be a state. You don't have to be one massive government controlling every different state. Like,
Yeah.
there are states' rights. It's a little different.
And last thing I would mention, I think we need to close this round, but last night I was talking to somebody and I was talking that how visionary the forefathers of this United States were, because I would say that their vision was not based on the current scenarios of that time. They were looking ahead of time. That's why they were able to pull up such a good system that still exists and still stands very firm, right? Of course, you go 100 years down the road, things will look a lot different. But for now, because of their vision, if they were stagnant on the current scenarios, United States would look a lot different than what it
And
looks.
I would say the reason they were able to be such visionaries is because they had a realistic estimation of human nature. And most revolutionary systems do not have a realistic view of human nature. And that is the whole problem with tribalism in the first place, right? Tribalism looks at other people and says, the problem in the world is out there somewhere. We're the good guys. The American Constitution and the American founding doesn't do that. It realizes that the problems in the world start within each and every one of us, which is a biblical principle. And the antidote to this situation with the Somalis, how to do this properly, is to employ those biblical principles. If people want to look at Somalis and say, well, the problem with Somalis is they're tribalistic, and think in terms of us versus them, we better not mirror that by thinking of us versus them by lumping the entire Somali community into one whole, but to stick to our software, to our operating system, which should be based on biblical Christianity, which sees everyone as an individual image bearer of God. Also going on right now, we're now in our 5th day of protests in Iran, and there's a whole conversation going right now where you got people in the streets of Tehran yelling death to the dictator, and then you have other people saying, this is just Western propaganda. What have you been following about the situation? What's going on?
I think I have a very strong take on this particular case, but I would love to hear from Ibars first, what he has to say, because he has to say some good things here.
So I didn't realize how intense they were. There was the holiday, and I was doing family things and, not really keeping an eye on that stuff. But, with Almeida, we were doing year-end fundraising. Ding. So that kind of stuff. I want to believe that this is grassroots. I want to believe it. I want to believe that it's grassroots, and I want to believe that it's a popular uprising. The reason why I think it could be is because I have an Iranian friend here who wore a hijab, all the time, and just showed up at one of, someplace I was at without one, after being in Iran for some time to be with their parents. So I'm seeing stuff on social media that's showing people who are real people, not influencers, or some activists. I obviously subscribe to a bunch of activists who are always talking about the situation in Iran. And they're very anti-regime, so I want to believe that this is legit. I want to believe that people are pissed. I want to believe that, they hit some level of organization on the inside and decided that they wanted something else. And I know that there are organizations that are out there, that have been out there the whole time, that have been waiting for this moment, and are probably capitalizing on it. But that being said, I am no fan of the regime. So, I think that anything that pushes the regime out the door, who knows? Maybe they wind up in a civil war, right? Maybe they wind up in more chaos. Maybe the Shah comes back and walks off a plane and everything is fine. Like, I don't know, but I do know that the regime has been, like a very negative force in the Islamic world, and a very negative force in the world.
The villains of Middle East, I call them. The villains of Middle East.
Yeah, they're bad. They're doing bad things. They're destabilizing other governments. They're interfering, in elections. They tried to have our president assassinated, several presidents of ours assassinated. Like, they need to go. And I don't know if this is like the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. I think that what I would like to see is, like if they all just happen to leave in the middle of the night on a bunch of planes, and wind up in another country, like the regime, and its leaders all wind up in another country or something like that in exile. I would like to see no civil war. I would like to see some kind of process, but I think right now and this is kind of what we saw in Saudi Arabia, right? Like I feel like people are done with oppressive, forced religion, right? Like, I think I've seen a lot of stuff over the past year that has talked about we are Iranians and our culture did not come from, we are Persians and our culture did not come like our native language wasn't Arabic. You know what I mean? Like the religions here were not Islam. Like we had a culture. Yeah, I mean, prior to it all being taken over.
I mean, then that's true for America too. It was not Christian
Sure. And I
country,
think it's a narrative you're hearing everywhere. It's not necessarily that America has to be like not
Yeah.
Islamic or Islamic, you know what I mean, or Christian or whatever. I think the point is that when you're in situations like this, people go back to their point of origin. We don't know who we are anymore because these people have had their like boot on our neck for so long that I will take pride in my culture's past more than I will accept what's being done to me now.
Yes, and you're seeing this all across the Persia sphere as well.
Yeah,
Like I have a friend who was hired by the Tajik government to make a video about Tajik history and all their rulers that goes way beyond Islam.
Right. I mean,
It doesn't reject it entirely; it just goes beyond it.
Turkey, like when I was growing up, the cartoons that you watched in the morning when we used to go there for vacation, or like the dramas or whatever, were not about what's happening now, right? Like, no, I'm sorry, with like the Sultan and the Caliphate and everything else like that. They were about, Turkic heroes fighting the Mongols, right? So this is, prior to anything happening with Islam.
Yeah.
And that's what people point to, right? As a point of like, this is part of our history, this is part of our national pride. And I think in situations like what's happened in Iran and in other places, it's a true colonization, right? And people are pissed off that they've been colonized in that way. I'm not saying that they're going to reject Islam. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they're going to change. I'm saying that they want their individuality in some way or another, and they're going to go back to their to what they can point to. And some people are going to point to the Shah, and some people are going to point to the history books, right? And some people are going to point to different things, and they're all going to want to start from a different place. And I think that in this situation, that's probably what's going to happen, right? Like if the regime leaves, people are going to argue about where to start from. Do we start from 1978? Do we start from, 1578? Do we start from but I don't think that the answer is in any of those things. I think that the answer is in what will we look like in 2078.
616 BC.
Here is, I would say, James, allow me to say, because I am holding my thoughts and sometimes I lose train of my thoughts. See, if we say how far we can go back in history to go to original form, there is no such thing as original form, right? People evolve in their cultures and become a new identity, and that new identity becomes your identity, right? Iran is similar, right? We have to look at when, I will make this statement because, I'm from that part of the world and people assume that I associate myself with those factions, but I do not. As much as I hate this Islamic regime, and I want them to go. I really want them to leave people of Iran to their own choices. But what I'm against is that inorganic change that is being pushed and saying that Islam is not the religion of Persia. Muslims are in Persia for so long. Persians are Islamic. They're Muslims, right? That's point number one. Point number two is we have seen and experimented in past. We have done this in Libya. We have done in many parts of the world where we try to enforce inorganic change by using our own factions. That leaves that country with more atrocity than before, right? So that happened in the past. If you want me to go over it, I'll go case by case. What happened in Libya, what happened in other parts of the world. Libya is coming on top of my mind. So is what other country I can think of?
Iraq.
Afghanistan, Iraq, right? All these countries. So right now what's happening is that West in general, and I'll tie it with Israel, they're so obsessed in removing the Islamic regime by hook or crook. There's the term, the hook or crook, right? They want to use their assets, right? And there is a growing anger towards the regime in Iran. And that's true with every country. There is a growing anger against Pakistani government in Pakistan. There is a growing anger or some anger in the United States against the Republican government. So what my point is, when you try to inject inorganic change, then you may be able to successfully remove that particular faction that you want to remove, but you do not have replacement. So if you let an organic change happen within the system, that organic change has ability to replace that system and be normal. Of course, it's going to take some time to normalize, but what I am against, again, my point is that right now what's happening in Iran, of course it's a threat. Of course I am acknowledging all the potential threat that Iran has, but the solution to that is not using your assets to start an uprising
You really
in
think
Iran.
that's what's happening?
Oh yeah, of course it's 100%,
Yeah.
without a single seed of doubt.
I would differ on this. So what you could say here is what's being protested right now is the water is running out in Iran. The currency is inflating, and home prices are getting bigger, right? And of course, to a certain extent, these are the result of American sanctions.
See,
right?
Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I think that's a very valid point that we are missing here. Right? Whenever there is uprising, it doesn't fall from the sky. It always preys on underlying issues. And when those issues get to a certain level, then the foreign assets got activated. There are sleeper cells. They get activated, right? In terms of money, in terms of social media influence, in terms of whatever, right? It doesn't happen in a country, say Switzerland. Doesn't matter how good of assets you have in Switzerland, you will not be able to start an uprising because everybody is happy in you. Just saying that you will not be able to do it. You will only be able to do it where there are some pain points. Right now, Iran has pain points because the Islamic regime versus the Shah regime, right? There is a contrast between a group of people who believe in Islamic system and there's a group of people who believe in Western ideology or liberalism in general, not Western, I don't know how to put it, but there's like a contrast. So there's a group of people and you can just invest on them, you can fuel them, and then it will start uprising. So in my opinion, that's a foreign funded uprising that is going.
I don't know. I think that anything is possible. I think that you could be right, but I also think that you could be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing.
Right?
So the last time we saw this would be the Masa Amini protests, right? I would make the argument that while there may be outside actors who see those as an opportunity, I would say the anger there was absolutely real.
Yes.
We know tons of ordinary Iranians who went to jail for being in those protests.
I've met some on streets in New York City. Like it's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, even friends here, like who all of us know personally, right?
Right.
We're part of that.
Yeah.
And so, I like that anger against the Iranian government exists in the Iranian people.
That's true.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so you don't need any outside actors to explain something like this. And I think, sure, part of Iran's economic woes are part of foreign tariffs against Iran. No doubt. But it's not only that. And I would make the argument
Sanctions, not tariffs.
Sanctions, right? I'd make the argument that the reason those sanctions are there is not because Iran is the one resistance against the voice of injustice, but because it's trying to build a sheer empire in the Middle East, not just against
Right.
America and Israel, but also against the Saudis, the Emiratis.
As I said, it's a villain in the Middle East.
The problem is like the Swiss are not trying to, I mean, not that I know of, but anyway, they're not trying to overthrow like, multiple countries in the Middle East to impose their Swiss ideology, like, which might not be too bad because you'd get nice watches and good chocolate.
For free, yeah.
Good stuff like that. Great banking system.
Yeah, you don't really need a president. You can just kind of like govern yourselves as separate sort of city-states.
Yeah.
Switzerland, if you're watching this.
Right. No, we're neutral. Want some chocolate? Like Swiss chocolate is actually pretty good. But I mean, I think that the problem is that like look at the Arab Spring, right? I don't think that the guy who set himself on fire in the Arab Spring was a political actor. I think it was just a dude who got broken by a broken system and then, decided that he was going to show the world on his way out how broken it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a horrible way to die, right? And then I think in Iran that, regardless of whoever's trying to influence the system, of course there are people like forces that are outside. Like the sanctions are there for a reason. Like, I don't think that most of the world's governments are wrong in sanctioning, right? It's not like the United States and Israel just standing there going, we're the only two sanctioning. Like Germany's sanctioning them,
Yeah, they're
the UN
legit
is,
reasons.
most of the countries in the UN are sanctioning them. And, for the longest time, the approach was, if we just give them a seat at the table, they'll change, right? So why was Iran on like the UN Security Council, like the Human Rights Council? It's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard, right? But it was like, if we let them talk and we let them have a voice and we let them, and it was a very kind of I don't want to say liberal. It's a very dovish position to take, right? To try and say, well, we'll sanction them and we'll try and talk to them. And that clearly hasn't worked, right? Whether you not you believe in the doctrine of force in the Middle East, these sanctions have brought people to the point where they're pissed about not having water. Some of it is like, maybe if you had not tried to destabilize all of these other countries, you might have more allies who would be willing to help you in your hour of need with water and supplies and even, prop you up politically. I don't see other countries running to Iran's aid in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't see Russia and China like flexing and saying, no, you're under our protection now. Maybe it's happening on some level, but it's not like there's in the Arab world, there's not countries coming out of the woodwork saying, we're going to support you. So
Gio, here's where while I would disagree with your read on the situation of why people are protesting right now and how big that foreign influence may be, what I would say is that I do think we should stay out of it.
Yes, that's my
Agreed.
overall take. I mean,
yeah, agreed.
The point which I'm trying to make, and thanks for making that point, that doesn't matter how much we want the Iranian regime to go, we do not want to use our influence in triggering something that we cannot sustain for a longer period of time,
right?
Because then it ignites a chain reaction that we cannot control. And we, as I said, we have seen that thing in the past. If Muslims, or just say if Iranians themselves want an Islamic regime, say 90% of Iranians, or through vote or whatever legitimate processes are, if they want to have that Islamic regime be there. Don't infect your neighbors. And of course, it's the Middle East is a whole big dynamics where you have to understand that the problem between Saudi Arabia and Iran and Shia Sunni factions and so on. So there's so many layers to understand.
Right.
But in simple terms, if Iranian people want the Islamic regime to be there, I'm not against it. But I am against when Iran try to influence their neighbors Lebanon, or Houthis in Yemen, or
right.
try to bomb Israel on their like on that side. So I'm against that. But again, to trigger any change and be part of it in joyfully accepting that we toppled the government by using people, I think I'm against.
Right. We don't want to send in SEAL Team 6, take out Khamenei, replace him with Reza Pahlavi. Easy, right?
Right.
It needs to, whatever comes to replace the Islamic Republic needs to come from Iran and be sustainable.
I mean, I would say, Jesus talked about birthing pains, right? And, if you were to take that analogy that he was using about how, the birthing pains are signs, right? Like the wars and the trouble and everything else are signs of his coming. That analogy has been used in nation states too, right? Throughout time, where like the birthing pains of America was the Revolutionary War, right? And the next thing you know, you have a country. And hopefully, this is like a birthing pains moment for Iran, getting ready to give birth to something better than the regime. But I would also say that it's important, for us as Christians to be able to understand, listen, ultimately, God allowed the regime to take power. He puts up one nation and he takes another down, right? Like, he's not just king of Israel. He's not just king of, like the West. He is Lord over all the earth. And, God is sovereign, particularly when it comes to, nation states. And there's a time when he deals with things. I mean, you cannot forget that Pharaoh was allowed to oppress people for 400 years and throwing their babies into alligators and worshiping himself like a king. And then when it was time, right? And, the one thing I can hope for as a Christian is echoing kind of what Sharjeel said, outside of our influence or whatever, that, God is able to use whatever's going on there to cause something happening. Because let's be honest, the church is growing the largest in Iran right now.
And so switching birth metaphors here, speaking from one genus to another, if there's this thing that if you have an egg and you crack the egg to let the baby out, that baby will usually die because it's pecking out of the egg, which gives the neck muscles the strength it needs to keep lifting its head up.
Right.
And so if you intervene in something like this, it doesn't allow the movement to develop properly, and it just becomes this sort of artificial thing that's
exactly
rather than being something that's homegrown. So the best thing we can be doing as Christians is praying for the people of Iran, praying that the regime would either reform or step out graciously, and that the people who lead Iran next are the people who will be ready to do it for the good of the Iranian people. So thank you for listening to Christ and Caliphate. We will be back next time.